Hey, what's up guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here. Happy Saturday to you and welcome back to my weekly Q&A session. Always good to have you here. This is my favorite part of the week and it's always great to have you guys. You're my community. This is my favorite crowd. I mean, I love everybody here, but you know, my Saturday crowd is just something special. So it's always great to have you here. So I'm going to start things off real quick. A friend of mine on Twitter actually submitted a question this week. His name's Gareth. I don't know if he's watching or not. I'm pretty sure he is. I looked for your question and I couldn't find it. So if you can just tweet it to me, I will go ahead and make it a priority for next week. I did want to make sure that this week I started back filling those questions that people had tried to ask for the past couple of weeks and I keep missing. So I wanted to make sure that I covered that this week. But speaking of things that I'm up to, you know that typically I make my guides and everything. I always try to do the most challenging thing out there, hence Lazo or Mythic difficulty. Well, I'm going to be taking those challenges outside this next time, outside my studio doors, and I'm going to be doing a different type of challenge. And this one's going to be a weird one. It's the Buffalo Wild Wings Blazing Challenge. For those of you who don't know what that is, you have to eat 12 of their hottest wings in 6 minutes. I know people can do that, but that's kind of a challenge for me. I'm used to the spiciness at this point, but oh my gosh, that's a lot of food for me. So we're going to see how that works. I'm going to do this on Wednesday, and if it works out, then I'm going to post it online for you guys to see. One other quick update, as I mentioned last week, for tomorrow's live session, I will be doing an interview with Symmetra from Overwatch. She's been a friend of mine for a long time, and that's still going on. So we're going to have the Q&A just a little bit later than usual. We're going to have it at 3 p.m. Eastern just because she just flew back from Amsterdam. So we want to make sure that, you know, she's well rested and, you know, is just ready to go when, you know, she comes online tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope you guys are too. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So for those of you who don't know how this works, each week I pick 12 questions that you guys ask in the comment section below of the previous week's video. So in other words, if you want a question submitted, all you got to do is submit it in the comment section below, and hopefully I'll pick it for the following week. I should pick it, but generally speaking, I submit 12 questions. We've been getting a lot of them lately, so I may start upping the questions that I pick from week to week. May up it to 20. So that's all you got to do. Is submitted in the comment section below. If I miss it for whatever reason, just go ahead and copy and paste it into the following week's video. And if I still miss it, you can follow me on Twitter and just tweet it to me on there. Links to my Twitter account can be found in the description below. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. Our first question of this week comes from Bobby Frank. And Bobby asks, would you like to see any units or characters or vehicles from Halo Wars 2 return in Halo 6? There are quite a few things that I'd love to see in Halo 6 from Halo Wars 2, and we've gotten hints from 343 that there is a high probability that Halo Wars, well, not a high probability, it will happen. Halo Wars 2 will tie in directly with Halo 6, so it would not surprise me at all. Personally, I'd love to see the little mini scarabs go into Halo 6. I'd love to see those from a first-person perspective. I forget what they're actually called. They have 4 legs and they have sort of an elongated head, and they usually just shoot beams from a distance. But the real thing that I'd love to see in Halo 6 from Halo Wars 2 are the Goliath hunters. Those are just basically oversized hunters that are red instead of green. They look super awesome, and I'd love to see those appear. We need some new units in combat. So hopefully those units will be making a return. That's a great opening question. Thank you, Bobby. Our next question comes from Lime Shake Strudler. And Lime Shake, oh, I love Lime. Lime asks, since one of the developers, can't remember their name, mentioned that Halo 5 and Halo Wars 2 story would tie together, will there not be any Jackals in Halo 6? I think he was mentioning, I think he meant Halo 6 and Halo Wars 2. In short, I don't know. I had done another video a while ago stating that there wouldn't be any Covenant in Halo 6, at least not the Covenant that we've traditionally known throughout the series, because Halo 5 pretty much finished them off. If you remember correctly, their Supreme Leader was killed off in the first mission. By the time they got to the Battle of Sanayan, the Swords of Sanghelios, with the combined efforts of with Fireteam Osiris, were able to push back the Covenant. and when the Guardian came up out of the sea, it wiped out pretty much everything else. The only Covenant that were left were basically sucked into the slip space portal, and that's who we fight on the final mission. So I strongly believe that there are no more Covenant left, or at least the ones that are remaining are probably scattered, you know, throughout the galaxy. They're on the run. If we fight any Covenant species at all, it most likely will be the Banished that we saw in Halo Wars 2. To that end, I know we didn't see any Jackals, so I don't know if we would see any Jackals or not in Halo 6. I have a feeling that a lot of this game is going to be heavily Promethean based. There may be some sprinkles of Flood, but I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of robot action in Halo 6. So I hope that answers your question, Lime Shake. Thank you. Our next question comes from Villain Caustic. Always good to see you, dude. And Villain asks, you know how in Red vs. Blue we've been able to see the faces of most of the characters? Why don't they show Washington's face or 47-Niner's face? So I'm not sure who 47-Niner is. I stopped watching the show after season 10. But in terms of Washington, I've never asked him this question, but I would think that it would be just the direction that the producer and the director want to go in. And also, you know what? It may just want to keep you watching. Maybe that's why they haven't done any face reveals yet for those characters, is because maybe you'll tune in for the next show just to see if they do it. I think that's pretty cool on their part if that's the way they're going. But I hope that answers your question, Villain. It's always good to see you here, man. Our next question comes from the Divine Immortals. I love that name. And the Divine Immortals asks, what if Halo 6 was set up with Master Chief looking for Mendicant Bias? So Mendicant Bias is, what's a better way of putting this? It's not really a robot, but sort of an artificial intelligence that was created to help fight the Flood. Eventually, Mendicant turned on the Forerunners, and then they had to create offensive bias, and he has a long, complicated history. But in a video I posted, I think a few months ago, I mentioned that I didn't believe Cortana was going to be the main villain for Halo 6, that really she was just a puppet for something like maybe the digitized Didact or Mendicant Bias being another option out there. As we get closer to Halo 6, I'm beginning to see more evidence that it's really the Didact, which was composed in, I think, was it Halo Escalation? It was a book or a comic book that took place after Halo 4. So I think that since he was such a prominent villain in Halo 4, and people liked him as a villain, they thought he was really powerful, had some of the best lines in the series. Time was your ally, human, and now it has abandoned you. You know, that type of thing. I think it was perfect, dead on. I would love to see him return in Halo 6. I think there's a demand to see him back in Halo 6, and I think that would be the way for them to do it. It's not Cortana. It's the Didact. It just disguised as Cortana. So, in short, I don't think that Mendicant Bias is going to play any real role in Halo 6 at this point, but it's still a possibility. So, that was definitely a cool question. I love diving back into the lore, so thanks, Divine. I appreciate that. Our next question comes from Happy Maniac. Well, let's be fair, is there really any other kind of Maniac? And Maniac asks, what weapon would you like to see return in Halo 5 or 6? Honestly, I would love to see the Halo 3 Gravity Hammer. You know, it was extreme power weapon. And Gravity Hammer is really my favorite weapon in addition to the Halo 1 fuel rod gun. But it had all the blue highlights. It was super powerful. It was always my favorite hammer to use during Griffball. And I thought the Halo Reach hammer and the Halo 4 hammer were just kind of weird. They seemed less powerful, less destructive. I say we go back to the Halo 3 version and bring that to Halo 6. So Maniac, thanks for asking that, dude. I always like thinking of my favorite weapons for Halo. I even got to hold the prop version of that, believe it or not, when I went to Bungie Studios and I got to whack a kid over the side of the head with it. Yep, that happened, and there's a picture. So thanks again for stopping by, Maniac. Our next question comes from Code Xanthium. And Code Xanthium asks, if 343 Industries did what Bungie did with Halo 3 ODST and made an expanded multiplayer disc for Halo 5, I think he means Halo 6, and just focused on the campaign and Forge mode for the main game, do you think they could improve Halo 6? And do you think people would enjoy that? Short end of it is, if this had been the case, back in the Halo 3 days or the ODST days, 7 years ago, maybe. I think in that case, I don't know this for sure, but I think the reason why they separated the discs was because they had space issues. You know, they had ODST and Firefight, the ODST campaign and Firefight mode on one disc. They had all the Halo 3 multiplayer and Forge and everything on the other disc. So I think that was probably the reason back then. But nowadays we see a much more aggressive push towards digital content. You don't see a lot of people going to stores waiting in line anymore. Even for the release of Halo 5 Guardians, I actually went to a GameStop to interview people, and I was planning on posting a video on that and just, you know, never got around to it. And to be honest with you, there weren't that many people that showed up, at least not in comparison to Halo 4. When I showed up to film a documentary about the Halo 4 release and actually submitted it to 343 Industries, the store was just packed. And I got to give prizes away that 343 had given me to give to other people. So I got to give those away. It was a lot of fun. That was back when my voice was hoarse for about 3 weeks. If you dig back down into my videos from 2012, you can probably hear it, especially for my first videos for my Halo 4 Legendary walkthrough. But more people are staying home now. It's far easier to just download the digital content than to have a hard copy. I mean, having a hard copy is fine, but this can be destroyed. If you have a digital copy, you can still delete it off your hard drive and just download it again anytime you want to. So in short, no, I don't think that them trying to make it on 2 separate discs would affect anything at all. But that is a cool question to bring up, and I appreciate it, Code Xanthium. Thank you. Our next question comes from Golden Elite 10. Oh, I'll always love hearing from you, Golden Elite. And Golden Elite asks, what Spartan customization is your favorite? In terms of combination modes, I always go back to Halo 3 because I love those combinations the best. And so my favorite thing to always wear when I was in multiplayer, after I earned the Recon armor from Bungie, or after they gave it to me, I don't think I really earned it. They just, you know, they were impressed. So, but anyway, my favorite combination was always to use the ODST helmet, which has always been my favorite helmet, and the Recon body armor and shoulder pads. So that was definitely my favorite. In terms of the current one, there's too many out there for me to really know for sure. The one that you're seeing me play right now on Warzone Firefight, that's the artwork customization that I like to stick with Halo 5 Guardians. And of course, the white suit for the Spartan matches my white suit that I wear every week. So that, I appreciate that, Golden. And tell me in the comments below what your favorite armor customization is. Our next question comes from Orion Smith. Oh, that's a cool name too. One of my favorite star systems, or star patterns in the sky, I should say. And Orion asked, I don't know if this has already been answered, but what was your opinion on the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary multiplayer? Should it have been the original, or do you like the Halo Reach multiplayer? This is kind of a complex question. So in short, you know how they have just the original Halo multiplayer in the Master Chief Collection? Yeah, personally, I like it, don't get me wrong, but I sort of would have preferred if they had actually remastered all the original maps and had their own little custom Halo Anniversary multiplayer for Master Chief Collection. That would have been really cool. As far as back when it first came out for Halo Reach, I honestly was fine with them sticking to the original, or what they call the classic playlist, because it had all the updated graphics and physics of Halo Reach, but the maps were basically direct remakes of several classic Halo Combat Evolved maps, one from the PC and one from Halo 2. And I'm glad they did that, because the reason they didn't do what you're asking right now is because they didn't want to divide the multiplayer community, because Reach would have dropped in population count, no one would be getting a game. You'd have some people going back to the Anniversary Edition and playing that, and it would go back and forth, and I just think it would destabilize the multiplayer population. So I think they made the right decision, and I hope that answers your question, Orion. Thank you. Our next question comes from Pro Jet. And Pro asks, do you think campaign DLC would work in Halo 6? Honestly, I don't see why not. They're doing it for Halo Wars 2, and I can easily see them using Halo 6 as a platform to just further expand their campaign, rather than just having a set one that you've got to just deal with for 3 years. I think that there is a high probability that it could happen, and I think that's an excellent question. Thanks for stopping by, ProJet. Our next question comes from Games with Kraken. Oh, it's always good to hear from you, Kraken. Welcome back, dude. And Kraken asks, do you think that 343 should just listen to the popular opinions of what Halo 6 should be, and whatever discrepancies pop up between the games and their lore, 343 should just say, look, we want the best game possible. The game is rewriting the lore to whatever extent, and we feel this makes the most sense to give the fans of the series what they want. So this is kind of an interesting question too. I'm going to give you some background here. Bungie's style wasn't to listen to the fans, believe it or not. Now, don't get me wrong, they did to an extent, but they always made the game they wanted to make. They weren't trying to, give us fan service. They wanted to produce what they wanted to produce. And I think that's partially what made it so good. They may have addressed concerns that we had with the game later on, and updates and patches and whatnot, but they made the game that they felt was the right thing to do. They wanted to tell their story. And to that end, I feel like that's what 343 really needs to do, but at the same time, they do need to take some advice from the fans in terms of don't base a game around lore that's outside of other video games. Make sure that you don't have to read, 17 books and watch a bunch of movies and listen to a bunch of podcasts just so you understand the plot. That's the only thing I'd really advise them, is to make sure the game is self-contained. If they can manage to do that, I say that they do what they want to do. It's not a bad idea to keep an ear out for what the fans want. Use it to make minor adjustments and so forth, but look at your own vision and see what you believe would be a better result for the game, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying don't listen to the fans at all. Obviously, use some common sense, but don't get so wrapped up in it that the story just becomes further convoluted and it just continues to divide the fan base. So I hope that answers your question, Kraken. Welcome back and take down that pirate ship. I saw what you did to Captain Jack, but good to see you here, man. Our next question comes from Silverface. And Sliverface asks, what do you think about a flood firefight mode for Halo 6? Honestly, to me, that's what the flood was made for. That shouldn't just be an option. That should be like the main focus of Firefight. That's what a firefight mode is, essentially. It's just waves and waves. I know I say that term a lot. But waves and waves of enemies, just barreling straight at you. You holding your ground. You've got the last stand. You're just mowing them down as you can. The Flood is a perfect enemy for firefight mode. I'm surprised they haven't done it yet. Essentially, I could see it working similar to like Call of Duty Zombies, but less stupid, if that makes any sense. I can see the Flood, you'd have multiple types of Flood. You'd have Flood that could infect other players. You'd have Flood that's constantly spreading and just making things more complicated. I think it would be a perfect thing, and it honestly would not surprise me at this point if they're strongly considering that for the next major Halo title. Not only is there a demand to see the Flood back, but we have seen in previous titles that 343 has an interest in the Flood. It may not necessarily be in the campaign. I kind of think it might be. But as we saw with Halo 4's Infection mode, they still want to keep the Flood somehow implemented into the campaign, or not to the campaign necessarily, but in the game itself. And I think a Flood firefight mode would be perfect for it. One of the things that I'm hoping they do for Halo 6 is, in addition to the Warzone firefight that they have now, they actually bring back Classic Firefight, and maybe an option where you can choose your enemies. Do you want to fight the Covenant? Do you want to fight the Banished? Do you want to fight the Prometheans? Or do you want to fight the Flood? And, even have matches where they mix them up a little bit. Maybe have not just one faction, but two factions, so they're fighting each other along with you. I think a multi-faction firefight would be absolutely outstanding. And you know what? I want you guys to tell me what you think about this idea in the comments below, because I would love to hear this from you personally. And just let me know if you have any suggestions that you'd like to add to it or anything like that. And maybe we can use this as a template and send this to 343 to see if it's something that they may actually implement in Halo 6. So thank you for bringing that up, Sliverface. I really appreciate it. That is an excellent question. And our final question of the day comes from Mark Sicola. And Mark asks, Tyrant, your live streams are great. Wanting to know, did you like Smallville? Because your dress style reminds me of Lex Luthor. So I wanted to take, this is going to be a long answer. In short, the short answer is no. In terms of, do I like Smallville? So here's part one of this answer. when I was growing up in Smallville, well, I was pretty much growing up at the time. When I was in college and Smallville first came on, I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and there was some sort of contract dispute between WB or CW or whatever it is and NBC, where they actually showed the television show. And the first time I saw it was after Saturday Night Live. I watched that show every week, and you know, one week I wasn't tired, so I didn't want to go to bed, and so I stayed up, and I came across this show that reminded me a lot of the X-Files. So this is how old we're talking here. You know, it was about this kid who could have X-ray vision. You know, he had super strength, and it was going around solving mysteries about, you know, killer mutants and things like that. And I thought, this is X-Files. I had no idea, since I'm not really a DC fan, I had no idea that it was actually a contemporary prequel to Superman. So until my brother pointed it out to me later, he's like, you really didn't get that? Kent? Clark? Come on, dude. And so I caught the first 2 seasons of the show. Well, not the first 2. I caught maybe like the back half of the first season. The first episode that I actually saw had something to do with bees. And so I watched it. I watched the season finale for it. And I actually started watching the show only a few weeks before season 2 started. And so I watched that, and I thought it was pretty cool. You know, it was like an X-Files take on Smallville, kind of, sort of. But then there was another contract dispute, and they took it off the air. So we went from having it on at midnight, along with other shows like Supernatural and Seventh Heaven, you know, basically in the wee hours of the morning, to not being on at all. So, in short, that's where I stopped it. I didn't really follow up with the show after that, but I've had this question asked before. So I went back, I think just a few weeks ago, because I've seen this question pop up a few times, and they have it on Hulu, and so I checked it out, and I was like, oh, I see where he's coming from on this. So the short end of the answer is no. The second half of this question is this. I'm about to tell you the origins of the Tyrant, the character I play every day here on MythicTyrant.com. So I've been playing this character even longer than this website has been around, even going back even further, since before I was known by Bungie. I have been playing the character of the Tyrant since 2001. Back then, I was a filmmaker. I was lucky enough to be in a school that had a studio, a very supportive staff, and very supportive students. I was actually kind of popular there. And I don't know how that happened, but it did. And I made a couple of movies. And I had a cast of 200 people help me out. Now, before I go too far into that, some of you may know that a few years ago, I was in the midst of making my own, another film called Shrine. It would have been the first film to appear on MythicTyrant.com, still may be. I'd still like to make it, but I had started making this film, and you might be thinking that it was going to be the first of its kind. What you don't know is that was actually the third film in a series that I started back when I was in high school. The first film in the series was called the Tyrant Documentaries. That's right, you just now learned what the title to this entire series came from and what it alludes to. My first film ever was called the Tyrant Documentaries. And so I played the main character, the Tyrant, and essentially who this guy was is a guy who dressed in a black coat. He wore an eye patch on his right eye, which is ironic because now I actually am blind in my right eye thanks to a motorcycle accident that I had a couple of years ago. And he was someone who came to power after a global war. And after this war happened, he was a part of this organization called the Shrine Syndicate. And in the first movie, what he did was he and his group of scientists engineered this virus called the Bionic virus. And what this virus would do is it would take humans and it would actually physically change them. It would replace their organic matter with silicon matter and actually make them cybernetic. So they would start out Yeah, I know you're thinking the Borg. I didn't know about the Borg yet, but it's even when I found out about that, it's still not quite the same thing. So whenever a human would become infected by this virus, they would start out being like a cybernetic zombie. They would sort of shuffle around, but you couldn't really shoot them in the head because they had mechanical parts everywhere, and so parts of them were bulletproof, but each one was different. And as time went on, and as the silicon kept building up on itself, they continued to evolve, and they would become more powerful and stronger, and instead of shuffling around, there was more organization to them. They'd have built-in weapons and so forth. And so in the first movie, Tyrant was able to use that army to essentially conquer the world. He won. Then I did a second movie called The Tyrant Apocalypse. And essentially what happens in this one is the Tyrant, it takes place from the perspective of the organization this time, whereas the first one took place from the perspective of the humans. This one took place from the perspective of the Tyrant and his organization, the Shrine Syndicate, which I don't mind telling you this because after I started working on Shrine, I actually got the entire series copyrighted back in 2011. So essentially and I still have the movies, by the way, in case you're wondering, but sorry to cut myself off there, but essentially in this one, the bionic virus gets out of hand, and it turns on the Shrine Syndicate and starts killing the staff. And so now everyone, including the Tyrants, trying to figure out how to get everyone left on board their orbital space station, the Ark, to try to basically save humanity and to start over. And so that's what the plot of that one's about. When Shrine came in, we were trying to think for years how to do a third film, because with the state of affairs that was left at the end of the Tyrant Apocalypse, we knew that it had to be a prequel. It couldn't take place afterwards. So we kept trying to think of a title for it. And at first we played around with titles like The Tyrant Prophecy or The Tyrant Legacy. And then we were like, you know what? We don't want someone thinking that we're trying to take after the titles of the Bourne or the Jason Bourne movies. So we decided to make it a one-word title based off of the Shrine Syndicate itself and just called it Shrine. And that movie was basically how the Shrine Syndicate helped this individual named Trevelyan rise to power. By the way, if you ever wonder why I give Arcos Trevelyan, who's on this site, a shout out all the time, that's why, because my main character for that series was Trevelyan. And so it shows him rise to power. Now the thing of it is, we decided to do a design change with this costume, because since this is pre-apocalypse that we're talking about here, walking around with a black coat on and an eye patch seems just a little too hokey. It seems a little bit too Dr. Evil-ish. So we decided, okay, we need to make him look more normal, but we need him to have symbolism in his appearance. We need there to be some foreshadowing there. So we ended up settling on a white suit, which white just happens to be my favorite color to wear anyway. So we settled on the white suit because I was apparently supposed to represent the Angel of Death. So I settled on the white suit. Then not long after that, my motorcycle accident happened, and my other one. And this is the one that destroyed my right hand. Some of you who've asked, why I wear the black glove, the real story behind that is, after that accident took my hand, I was fitted with a bionic glove that I use, and it's supposed to be not just protective, but also healing. It hasn't really helped so much with the healing part, but it does keep the hand safe from infection and so forth. And so when people saw this, and they saw it with the white suit, they're like, we need to stick to this. This looks great. It looks like he's got the black hand, like the black hand of death. And so, it's just a very dark, sinister image. So we decided to keep that. Now, while this was going on, I was doing the walkthroughs for Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo Reach for Mythic difficulty. And when we finally got to Reach, because I thought that was going to be the last Halo game, I did a face reveal at the end of my Halo Reach Mythic walkthrough. It's still on halo.bungie.org today if you want to look at it. It's for Lone Wolf. And I decided to stick with the white suit. I liked the premise for the film, so I decided to stick with it for my character on MythicTyrant.com and also Bungie.net. And it's just stuck with me over the years. That's basically who I play on this site. Now, interestingly enough, since he asked if I had gotten this from another character, I've actually wondered sometimes, suspiciously wondered, if any of the stuff from the Tyrant documentaries was actually ripped and taken by another group of people or another organization. And maybe it's just me being paranoid, but there's some things that I've found in certain shows and so forth that look just like the stuff that I filmed back in 2001, 2002, and 2003. The biggest one so far that I've come across that really just threw me off, and I'll see if I can throw some footage up here if I can find it, but the biggest thing was the governor from The Walking Dead. So if you actually take an image of how I was dressed in the Tyrant documentaries way back in the day, and you put it side by side by the governor in his like full final form, they look a lot alike. The actor who plays him kind of looks like an older version of me. He wears the eye patch. He's got the same type of coat that I was wearing. And then you got to think of the circumstances surrounding it. Who is the governor? He's a guy who basically is raising an army, and he's, in addition to a town, and trying to rebuild civilization, but in the process raising an army to topple other groups or settlements or whatever. And that's essentially the motive of the Tyrant. When you think how he got to the way he was, it's because he lost everyone he loved. Guess what? That's how the Tyrant went insane. When you think of just the process of the eye patch in of itself, he actually gets injured in battle. He starts out wearing the bandage and then graduates to a sinister eye patch. So did the Tyrant, interestingly enough. And then you got to think of the names themselves. The Tyrant, the Governor. Really? Really? So I can't help but think, keep in mind, my character came out in 2001. The Walking Dead comics didn't even come out till 2006, and then the show came out in 2010. And so I went back, and keep in mind, I was a senior by the time I finished the Tyrant documentaries, and there were 200 people involved in this, so it honestly wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying they did it, I'm not saying they actually took something from something a kid did in high school, but what I am saying is that there were a lot of people out there who have it, and it wouldn't surprise me if they said, you know, there was this DVD we saw one day where this kid did this sort of apocalyptic thing, and we thought, you know what, that's a cool character, let's change a couple of minor details. We'll call him the Governor, and boom, he's a character on The Walking Dead, which, by the way, is an post-apocalyptic story, and so was the Tyrant documentaries and the Tyrant Apocalypse. Again, there's so much there that seems overly coincidental. Is it just me, or does it sound like there's at least a possibility there? So I know that was a bit long-winded. I hope that answers your question. Again, the Tyrant is my character, 100%. But I hope that answers your question. I hope that you guys had a great time today. I had another great Q&A session with you guys. A lot of great content this week. I really appreciate it. And again, don't forget, tomorrow we have another live stream at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and Symmetra from Overwatch will be joining us. If you have questions for next time, you can let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter. Links to my social media can be found in the description below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, click that subscribe button for more video game related content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on MythicTyrant.com. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I can't wait to see you all right back here next time. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.